Winter, Cursed Forest, Witch. Just to set the mood. Like, it actually hurts my heart that I care so much about characters that are words on paper. I want them to be real. Like, I need them to be real. If you fell in love with dragons this year, if you fell in love with dragons with like a fourth wing, I would recommend you the ultimate dragon book, in my opinion. Gorgeous, stunning. I'm getting an arm workout from holding these up, so I'm gonna put them down now. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tori. If you're new, I'm so happy that you're here because today we are talking about all of my winter fantasy book recommendations. I have quite a varied list. I have some like really fun, more lighthearted fantasy romance. I have some young adult fantasy romance. I have some big, chunky, epic fantasy romance books, so whatever you're in the mood for, there should be some recommendations on this list for you. I hope that you're excited. If you are, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Let's talk about some books. Okay, we will start with some fantasy romance books. All of these do have more of a like wintry setting, so, and they're a bit on the more lighthearted side. So the first one that I want to talk about is Curse of the Wolf King by Tessana Odette. I read this book and I love this book. I feel like this book is so underhyped because a lot of us, understandably so, think that the Beauty and the Beast retelling is a little bit trite. It's just overdone at this point. And I hear you, I really, really do. But if you love a Regency era fantasy romance that has to do with fae, and this has a very fun, unique spin to the Beauty and the Beast retelling, I really think that you would like this book. It has to do also with like fake dating slash matchmaking. So our main female character isn't the one that's fake dating the male character. She's the matchmaker to set him up, and that was also extremely fun and refreshing too. So we follow Gemma Bellafleur. She wants to leave her past behind, forget the day that the scandal broke her heart, but when she's captured by a trickster, Fae King, who threatens to hold her for ransom, she'll find herself at the top of the gossip column yet again. Unless, plagued by a curse that will soon claim his life, the human-hating King Elliot will do anything to save himself. And if Gemma can use that to her advantage, she might be able to bargain her way to freedom. All she has to do is help him break his curse. There's one hitch. To do so, they'll have to trick someone into falling in love with the beastly, brooding Elliot. This is literally so fun. It's also a very quick read, and you can find it on Kindle Unlimited. This is an entire series, Entangled with Fae series. Honestly, I would recommend any of them to read during the winter time because they're just so fun. You can absolutely fly through them. They all have a different fairy tale retelling. My favorite is the second book, which is Heart of the Raven Prince, I believe. That one's the Cinderella retelling. It's the second one in the series, where this is the first. Give it a try. It does also have a wintry setting, and our main character loves to like read books, and she's just like a cozy girly, and we love her. So Curse of the Wolf King. The second books that I'll talk about are the Frost and Nectar series. I know I've mentioned these so many times on my channel, but now it's winter, and these books fit the winter vibe very, very well, and they're, again, super fun, super quick to read fantasy romance books. All of these, like, if you're looking to get some books to meet your Goodreads goal, these are books that you can just absolutely fly through. They're easy to understand. They're such a cute romance. Anyways, Frost by C.N. Crawford, and then if you want to continue with the duology, Ambrosia is the second and final book in the series. Both of these also have graphic audios. I believe that they're coming out soon. Frost is already out. I can't remember if the graphic audio for Ambrosia is out, but that's a whole vibe as well. These books are about a deadly dating game. We have a Fae prince who holds a deadly competition to find his bride, and he lives in this world that is cursed by a forever winter. I won't lie, Frost didn't have too much wintry vibes, but some of the competitions do take place outside. They're adventuring outside, but then a lot of scenes do happen in the castle as well. So it's kind of a balance. It's not like the most wintry vibes in the whole world, but they are there, and the romance is so fun. The first book was not spicy at all, but I'm hoping that the second book is. However, the romance had me absolutely gagged. Then we have a YA. I have Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. Not gonna lie, like, this wasn't my favorite book in the whole entire world. I think I gave it 3 stars, but just because it wasn't my favorite doesn't mean it can't be your favorite. I'm here to give you all of your options for wintry romantasy recommendations. So this is a witchy, wintry book, super wintry. Winter, cursed forest, witch. Just to set the mood. The woods around the town of Fir Haven are magical and cursed. Rumored to be a witch, only Nora Walker knows the truth. She and the Walker women before her have always shared a special connection to the woods, and it's this special connection that leads Nora to Oliver Huntsman, the same boy who disappeared from camp for wayward boys a week ago, but in the middle of the worst snowstorm in years. He should be dead, but here he is alive, left in the woods, no memory of the time he'd been missing. Sketcheroo, very sketcheroo. But Nora can feel an uneasy shift in the woods in Oliver's presence. And it's not too long after that, Nora realizes she has no choice but to unearth the truth behind how this boy she has come to care so deeply about survived his time in the forest and what led him there in the first place. There's a mystery element to this. It's kind of suspenseful. You have to, in my opinion, our main character is extremely like naive, and she's one of those characters where the author has to hold her hand to like put the pieces together, but it is really fun. It's extremely atmospheric. The magic in this book is kind of a fun element as well. So Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my favorite wintry romantasy series, and if you haven't read the series yet, what are you actually doing? Once Upon a Broken Heart. These books take place in the magnificent North, and they are so wintry. This is a modern day fairy tale. These books are amazing. Jax and Evangeline are one of my absolute favorite fictional couples of all time. Like, it actually hurts my heart that I care so much about characters that are words on paper. I want them to be real. Like, I need them to be real. These books are so magical, and if you aren't interested in starting with the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber before jumping into these, I would say, like, that's okay. There's gonna be some context that you're not gonna really know about. If you don't care about spoilers for the Caraval series, you could probably just look up the context of these books. But our main character is Evangeline. We'll summarize the first book. I haven't done this in a while. I read this so long ago. Our main character is Evangeline Fox, and as long as she can remember, she has believed in true love and happy endings. She is just the most like naive, magic believing, true love chasing female main character, until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. Desperate to stop the wedding and to heal her wounded heart, Evangeline strikes a deal with the charismatic but wicked Prince of Hearts. In exchange for his help, he asks for 3 kisses to be given at the time and place of his choosing. But after Evangeline first promised kiss, she learns that bargaining with an immortal is a dangerous game, and that the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her than she pledged. He has plans for Evangeline, plans that will either end in the greatest happily ever after or the most exquisite tragedy. Read these books. Another fantasy romance that I'll talk about that I think will be really perfect for winter is called The Prince of Snow. This is by L.B. Devine, and I believe you can find this on Kindle Unlimited. I haven't read this yet. I'm hoping to read it in December. It sounds so good. We have 2 main characters, 2 love interests, who both have a secret magic that they're hiding. I think that's so fun. So Charmaine Grimes has a dangerous secret. She possesses the power of invisibility. But in the First Kingdom, those found with magic are forced to serve the wicked king Ronan or face execution. No one has seen Dalton Sephiroth, the prince of the First Kingdom, in 5 years. He's been locked away by his dad because he also has a power of ice flowing through his veins. After a devastating fire in Charmaine's hometown, knights escort the survivors to King Ronan's castle. With the mysterious enemy at large, the First Kingdom is threatened, and the destiny prophesized is ever looming over Dalton's head. As Charmaine falls for the Prince of Snow, she is thrown into a world of politics, cruelty, and temptations she's never expected. When the First Kingdom's enemies attack the surrounding towns and eventually the castle, Charmaine, Prince Dalton, and other allies must rise up for the battle of their lives or die trying to save the kingdom. This book is influenced by King Arthur, which I think is so fun. I feel like King Arthur isn't done enough lately. The only one that's, I mean, all over the place is obviously like Legendborn and Bloodmarked, but I think this one will be a good one too. Okay, we're gonna transition out of like feel-good, super wintry aesthetic fantasy romance, and we're gonna go into just some books that I think would be good for winter in general, still under the fantasy category, and actually this first one is fantasy romance. So we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Again, this isn't super atmospheric in terms of wintry vibes, but the second book comes out at the end of December, and so it would be such a perfect time to read it, and it is a stunning YA fantasy romance, but it's a very, very low fantasy. This is so easy to understand. It kind of takes place, in my mind, it does take place in a fictional world, but if I had to relate it to a time period in our own, probably like World War II time period, our main characters are very old-fashioned. They are rivals to lovers in the best way. Like, this is one of the best rivals to lovers I've read. We have Iris and we have Roman Kit. The way that they banter will have you gagged and clutching your pearls. Like, it's so good. After centuries of sleep, the gods are warring again, but the 18-year-old Iris Winnow just wants to hold her family together. Her mother is suffering from addiction and her brother is missing from the front lines. Her best bet is to win the columnist promotion at the Oath Gazette. To combat her worries, Iris writes letters to her brother and slips them behind her wardrobe door, where they vanish into the hands of Roman Kit, her cold and handsome rival at the paper. When he anonymously writes Iris back, the two of them forge a connection that will follow Iris all the way to the front lines of the battle for her brother, the fate of mankind, and love. This will have you sobbing at the end. Like, I was crying tears at the end of this. It ends on such a cliffhanger, and most of the story is not suspenseful. It gets so suspenseful right at the very end. So December or winter would be a great time to pick this one up, because you'll have the second book to follow it very, very shortly, where I read this book in like the summer and I've been dying ever since to get my hands on book 2. I'll follow that up with another fantasy romance book, Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I have recommended this book so many a time, but I feel like it's such a good, cozy, cute romantasy to read for winter. Again, not super atmospheric with the winter vibes. However, it's adorable. It's actually another Regency era. So these are my two Regency era recommendations in this video. I don't know why. Regency era and like kind of like feel good, old-fashioned-y love stories just fits winter in my brain. The characters in this book will make you absolutely fall in love. They're peculiar. They have their quirks to them. They're extremely quirky characters, and I don't mean that in like a gross way. I know sometimes quirky can be like annoying. No, they're just such unique characters to anything else that I've ever read. So we have our main character who was cursed by a fairy when she was very, very young. Her name is Dora, and she has no sense of fear or embarrassment, which makes social interactions with her a treat to read about. It's an unfortunate condition that leaves her prone to accidental scandal, and during the Regency era times, you try to avoid scandal at every turn. Dora hopes to be quiet, sensible wallflower during the London season, but when Elias Wilder, the handsome, peculiar, and utterly ill-mannered Lord Sorcier, discovers her condition, she's instead drawn into dangerous fairy affairs. I gave this 5 stars, literally loved it so much. You need to read this book. I'm gonna transition out of like fun, cute, cozy fantasy romance vibes, and we're gonna switch more into just like fantasy books. But this one I think still fits kind of a cozier vibe. It's fairly low stakes, however, there are points in here that get quite suspenseful. So that is The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. It's so magical and whimsical, and if you love a slightly more lyrical writing style, but really just a world filled with whimsy, I think that you would enjoy this book. But the magic and just the world and the characters, I was so emotionally invested. Our main character is Biddy. This is also very YA. It leans on, I guess, a little bit the younger side. So Biddy lives off the coast of Ireland on a legendary island that's hid by magic. Her guardian is a recluse, and he is a very, very powerful magician. So she's always grown up, all she's ever known is this island with her guardian, and they're like magical familiar creatures. The island is called High Brazil, but it's a life that as she continues to grow up, she finds it quite stifling, and she wants to start to branch out and actually leave the island and go into the real world and participate in the real world. One night, Rowan, who's her guardian, fails to return from his mysterious travels, and to find him, Biddy must venture into the outside world for the first time. But Rowan has powerful enemies, forces who have hoarded the world's magic and have set their sights on the magician's many secrets. Biddy may be the key to stopping them, yet the closer she gets to answers, the more she questions everything she's ever believed about Rowan, her past, and the nature of magic itself. It's a really sheltered girl who's going out and kind of discovering the world for the first time, pushing her boundaries, learning about magic, learning that not everything in real life is a complete fairy tale world like she grew up in, and she has some really hard realizations, and it just gets very emotional. Next up is a super shorty, but it is another fairy tale retelling. I didn't mean to do this on purpose, but I guess like winter to me just screams fairy tale, magical, whimsical worlds. This is by Alex E. Harrow. I love her writing style so much. She is on the Goodreads Choice Awards for one of her recent releases as well, called The Starling House. But this is one on her backlist. If you read The Starling House and you really liked it, absolutely recommend more of her writing. So this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. It's like nothing you would ever imagine a Sleeping Beauty retelling to be. It goes quite dark, and this is a novella, so again, if you're looking to add a book to hit a Goodreads goal, this is a great one, and it's a really good read. But if you get the physical edition, there's a ton of beautiful illustrations in here that just elevated the reading experience. So, A Spindle Splintered, Sleeping Beauty is the worst fairy tale, pretty much any way you slice it. It's aimless and amoral and chauvinistic as shit. I don't usually swear at my channel, so I do apologize for that without warning. Even among the other nerds who majored in folklore, Sleeping Beauty is nobody's favorite. The romantic girls like Beauty and the Beast, vanilla girls like Cinderella, goth girls like Snow White, only the dying girls like Sleeping Beauty. There's like a long-term / terminal illness representation in this book. It's Xenia Gray's 21st birthday, which is extra special because it's the last birthday she'll ever have. When she was young, an industrial accident left Xenia with a rare condition. Not much is known about her illness, just that no one has lived past 21. Her best friend Charm is intent on making Xenia's last birthday special with a full Sleeping Beauty experience, complete with a tower and a spinning wheel. But when Xenia pricks her finger, something strange and unexpected happens, and she finds herself falling through the world with another Sleeping Beauty just as desperate to escape her fate. And then last up, before I start to get into just some like serious big chunky fantasy books that I can't wait to read and that I love to read in winter, we have Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. This is one that I haven't read yet, but when I heard Witcher vibes and Gideon the Ninth vibes, that just fits winter so well. Like, the other part of me that doesn't want something like whimsical, fairy tale, magical, wants something with a little bit more of a serious tone and just like a solid fantasy book. I believe this one's a YA actually as well. So this book is about killing gods. Gods are forbidden in the kingdom of Midran. Formed by human desires and fed by their worship, there are countless gods in the world. But after a great war, the new king outlawed them and now pays god killers to destroy any who try to rise from the shadows. As a child, Kissin saw her family murdered by a fire god, and now she makes a living killing them and really enjoying it. But all this changes when Kissin is tasked with helping a young noble girl with a god problem. The child's soul is bonded to a tiny god of white lies, and Kissin can't kill it without ending the girl's life too. Joined by a disillusioned knight on a secret quest, the unlikely group must travel to the ruined city of Blenrodden, where the last of the wild gods reside, to each beg a favor. Pursued by assassins and demons, and in the midst of a burgeoning civil war, they will face a reckoning. You have adventure, you have high stakes, you have a mystery that needs to be solved, and a disillusioned knight. Please, that is my weakness. Godkiller. Okay, my last 3 books are a little unhinged just because they are so long. But if you're like me, as I mentioned, December, January, February, I love to dive in to a big, chunky, epic, serious fantasy book. It just fits. Like, you can take a little bit slower time with it. You have so much time to get to know these characters, and the pacing of epic fantasies just fits winter in my opinion. So the first book that I'm going to talk about, these are so massive, is probably the longest book I've actually ever read, I think. The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. If you fell in love with dragons this year, if you fell in love with dragons with like a fourth wing, I would recommend you the ultimate dragon book, in my opinion. I love these characters so much. If you're a sucker for a character-driven story, you will love this book. It's multi-POV across an entire world. Each character is in their own place in the world. They have their own things going on. It's a story that kind of all comes together, and you have all of these pieces that seem like they're very separate, but they all come together in the end. And oh my gosh, it's so impactful. It's so emotional. It's so beautiful. There is some romance in this as well, which, oh my God, stole my breath away. Just go into it knowing the dragons are incredible, absolutely incredible. And like I said, if you love a character-driven story, these characters and the amount of time that you just get to spend with them and get to know them and see their perspective and see all their hardships that they're dealing with and overcoming these massive, massive obstacles that are in their way, and how these randomly separate characters become like a team. Oh my gosh, it is stunning. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I gave it 5 stars. I do want to reread it at some point. However, I'm not going to reread it quite yet because the other book that I'm going to recommend is also by Samantha Shannon, A Day of Fallen Night. This is on my TBR for December. I cannot wait to get to it. It's been one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I still haven't read it yet. We're not going to talk about it. Another massively chunky book. This book is technically the prequel to Priory, but these are both standalones. And so Samantha Shannon has said you don't necessarily have to read one to read the other and understand. But I think that if you did read Priory first, going into this is going to provide more like history and backstory to the world, which is incredible in my opinion. So we have another epic feminist fantasy. There is queer representation, I guess, in this one and also in Priory. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Really complex female characters, a fantastical world, an amazingly depthful, magical world with fantastical creatures. I can't wait to read about the dragons in this book. Oh my gosh. And I hope that we get a little bit more of like the Priory of the Orange Tree in this one and more of like that history and depth, because learning what we did in Priory was so incredible, but to be able to build upon it in this, gorgeous, stunning. I'm getting an arm workout from holding these up, so I'm gonna put them down now. Except for my chunkers is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. The next book in this series has finally been announced. It's coming out in 2024, I think towards the beginning of 2024. So now would be the perfect time to read this book if you haven't already, or do a reread, honestly. Empire of the Vampire is a world where vampires are not romanticized. Vampires are actual monsters, and they have caused mass destruction and just caused an entire cultural collapse in this book. It is devastating. Like, you will cry. This is a very serious fantasy book, and I mean that not to say it's difficult to understand. I feel like that kind of comes off as like, oh my gosh, buckle your seatbelt, like your brain's about to work. No, it's just a very like serious toned book. It has a lot of emotional depth to it, and there's not a lot of like lighthearted moments to break it up. There's like a little bit, but really not a lot. I really enjoyed exploring vampires in this way. I think that Jay Kristoff did an amazing job with this book. It also does have character art weaved throughout the story that is stunning, like absolutely stunning. I probably need to reread this before I read the next book, but it might be like a January reread for me. I couldn't recommend this book enough. I feel like no one's talked about it in quite some time because it did come out in, I think, 2020. Yeah, it came out in 2021. So I haven't heard people talk about this in a while. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. And then my last fantasy book recommendation, that is one of the chunky ones, is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is a book that I am currently reading. I'm almost at the halfway point, and I couldn't be having more fun if I tried. Again, character-driven story. It's a multi-POV story that actually really reminds me of how like A Priory of the Orange Tree is written, where it's multi-POV, there's different characters in different parts of the world, like things are going on, but I know that they're all playing a role in something that's going to come together very, very nicely at the end. You kind of learn as you go with this. Brandon Sanderson was an author that was so scary and intimidating to me, and reading this, I had to like work up the confidence to do so. And then when I read the first 100 pages, I was like, why was I so scared of this? It's so easy. I will say there's not like a big info dump in the beginning of this book. It's very, very gradual with the world building, and it's stunning. So we have a kind of political fantasy romance. There's things going on in this world that are confrontational between gods and a more like human royal family. The gods have kind of taken over in this world, and things have been peaceful for a very long time, but now things are kind of coming to a head because this treaty that they've had to maintain peace has come to kind of an end, and they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what happens now? What are the next steps? The magic system and how color is talked about in these books, I am shocked, I am stunned. It is everything. Highly recommend. I think this would be such a good one to pick up for winter. And that is it, friends. Those are all of my winter fantasy book recommendations. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you've liked any of these. If you have your own winter fantasy recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below. I would love to see them. I will catch you in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one, friends. Bye!